Hello, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Douglas Johnson, and I am a yoga teacher at the advanced 500-hour level. I'm a kirtan artist, musician, amongst other things. And today I wanted to talk about how what you're experiencing in the present is actually the past. Before I get into today's talk though, I do want to thank my patrons on Patreon. They are the community that contribute monthly that allow me to do this as part of my job. As a yoga teacher, and not a famous one at that, I don't have a lot of resources. So in order for me to be able to produce these humble talks without any kind of paywall does require some financial support. So I want to thank that community. If you want to become a part of that community, please check out the links below. You can also leave a one-time tip on PayPal or Venmo, and you can also help out by liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting. All right, so let's get into today's talk. What you're experiencing in the present is actually the past. This is a scientific fact, but it also is a psychological truth, and we could say even a spiritual truth. And so we're going to explore why this is absolutely essential to our happiness and well-being. Okay, what if I told you that everything you're experiencing right now is actually the past? It's hard to believe, isn't it? Well, it actually is true. The science behind this is that light and sound they don't travel instantaneously. It takes time for light and sound to travel from whatever source you're viewing to your eyes and ears. So the further the source is from you, the further back in time what you're viewing is. So a great example of this is stars. You might be looking at a star in the sky, and actually that star could be gone in this moment. But what you're experiencing is the past, because that light took a long time to reach you. Additionally, our brains take time to process sensory data. So this is why reflexes, they actually come from your spine rather than from your brain, because by the time you realize you have your hand on a burning hot stove, you might get third-degree burns. Whereas if the signal goes from your hand to your spine and then the spine tells your hand to move, you might only have first-degree burns. So pretty interesting stuff. So this is the science behind it, this statement, the truth of this statement. And it tends to be somewhat insignificant, right? So there's a little bit of a delay. But I just like to establish that so we can understand that what we experience as the present is actually the past. Maybe it's just a few milliseconds or half a millisecond the past, but it's still the past, okay? Now, the more interesting and impactful truth of this statement that what we experience in the present is actually the past, I think is when we get into the psychology of it. So for this, we're going to look at A Course in Miracles, because A Course in Miracles is very interesting. It's both a spiritual text and a psychological text. So the section I'll highlight today is Lesson 7 from the workbook, and it's titled, I See Only the Past. Okay, so I'm going to read to you word for word from this section. This idea is particularly difficult to believe at first, yet it is the rationale for all of the preceding ones. So there were, again, 6 lessons before. It's basically saying this lesson is the foundation for those others. It is the reason why nothing that you see means anything. It's the reason why you have given everything you see all the meaning that it has for you. These are really impactful, really important things to understand. It is the reason why you do not understand anything you see. It is the reason why your thoughts do not mean anything and why they are like the things that you see. And it is the reason why you are never upset for the reason that you think. It is the reason why you are upset because you see something that is not there. Okay, so each of those can be really unpacked in quite a powerful way. So have a lot of spiritual impact there if we understand and accept these as truth. Old ideas about time are very difficult to change because everything you believe is rooted in time and depends on your not learning these new ideas about it. Yet that is precisely why you need to learn new ideas about time. This first time idea is not really so strange as it might sound at first. Look at a cup, for example. Do you see a cup, or are you merely reviewing your past experiences of picking up a cup, being thirsty, drinking from the cup, feeling the rim of the cup against your lips, having breakfast, and so on? Are not your aesthetic reactions to the cup too based on past experiences? How else would you know whether or not this kind of cup will break if you drop it? What do you know about this cup except what you learned in the past? Would you have no idea what this cup is except for your past learning? Do you then really see it? Again, really powerful teaching here. Are we actually seeing what we're seeing, or are we seeing our past ideas of something? Somebody said that when you teach a child to say the word bird in response to seeing a bird, the child will never see the bird again. So this is a similar idea here. So the lesson goes on. Look about you. This is equally true of whatever you look at. Acknowledge this by applying the idea for today indiscriminately to whatever catches your eye. For example, I see only the past in this pencil. I see only the past in this shoe. I see only the past in this hand. I see only the past in that body. I see only the past in that face. This backs up a theory I have, which is that one of the reasons why people love to travel so much is because traveling can force us into presence. And the reason for this is our brain recognizes that we are not in familiar territory. And so we automatically, pretty effortlessly, come into presence. And very often, we mistakenly ascribe the positive feelings that we have and this sort of pseudo-spiritual experience of travel to the place, where actually it is much more the unfamiliarity that forces us into it. Of course, seeing beautiful sights and trying great exotic food, it doesn't hurt to have a good experience. But really, it's the presence that often brings that sort of pseudo-spiritual feeling to our travels. So understanding this begins to help us see why it's so important to understand this concept. If I'm not dealing with somebody in the present, but instead dealing with a past version of them, or dealing with somebody who they remind me of, then I'm often going to not respond in the appropriate way to what's actually happening in the present moment. I may not be able to forgive when forgiveness would be the best path forward for myself and for everyone involved. I may also, in other instances, struggle to learn or grow in some way because in the past I had difficulty with this, where actually it may not actually be a problem in the present. In fact, I might not even try something because of past experiences. The past manifests in our bodies through emotions. I sense something that my body unconsciously recognizes as a past danger, and I will feel a negative feeling, a negative emotion, even if I'm perfectly safe in this moment. I may also shut down when faced with certain circumstances, which is the freeze response of fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. Many people grow up in environments that were chronically unsafe, and they develop a type of hypervigilance as a result. This may not be conscious on their part at all, and they may go around with a low-level feeling of dread or unease that they're not aware of, but is still robbing them of peace and joy and affecting their thoughts, feelings, and behavior. This is one reason why cultivating the ability to be non-reactive in yoga is so powerful. If we can learn to be present with sensations and emotions without reacting to them, but instead responding to them, we can choose a new way forward. We can recognize that just because I feel the need to run and hide at a cocktail party, that does not mean that I'm actually in danger, that I should actually do that, or that there's really any benefit to doing the above. So how do we cultivate non-reactivity in yoga? What is the process? We do this by holding a yoga pose past the point where it's comfortable. By being still in Shavasana past the point where we want to be still. By staying in a seated meditation when we'd rather get up and move around. It's essential to consciously choose this and to sense that you're in a safe space. So if you're not safe around other people, you could do this at home on your own. But again, it has to come from within the individual. They have to choose. A teacher can be there holding space for you and encourage you, but no one can make you do this, or if they do, it defeats the purpose. So if you're doing it because you're afraid of somebody, you won't learn the same lesson that you'll learn if you just simply choose to do this. So this is something I would actually encourage students to do in yoga, is go in and decide that no matter what you're feeling, you're going to hold the poses, you're going to do everything that you can physically do. Of course, if you can't physically do something, or if you actually are in physical danger, you don't do it, obviously. But consciously deciding, okay, I'm going to go into this yoga room, and even when things get really uncomfortable, I'm just going to hold space for that. This is what can help us begin to overcome this. This ultimately leads to freedom. So beyond the psychological is a manifestation aspect to this. Specifically, manifestation as taught in the law of assumption. I've been really interested in this metaphysical teaching, and one idea that has really resonated with me lately is that it takes time for reality to reflect our inner state, and it also takes time for us to change our inner state. So this school of metaphysical thought postulates that you don't manifest what you want, but what you are. If you want to be rich, you must first be rich in spirit, and then reality will eventually reflect this outwardly for you. One stumbling block many manifestors have is holding a belief long enough for it to manifest into physical reality. It can take time for us to both create a new inner reality and for outside reality, what we call outside reality anyway, to reflect it. There really is no in or out, ultimately. So how do we deal with the cognitive dissonance that arises when I affirm that I'm wealthy, for instance, and yet reality keeps showing me that I am not? The answer that's worked best for me, so far anyway, is knowing that what I am seeing and reacting to right now is actually part of an old identity, i.e. the past. Since I don't get what I want, but who I am, I need to choose to be someone other than I have been up to this point if I want to experience new things. Choosing your new identity is best done from the highest spiritual perspective, that of the unmanifest, or what we call the I am. If I can recognize that old doubts, fears, and anxiety are from an old identity from the past, I can allow them to arise without acting on them or giving them power or trying to do something about them. This is a common question for manifestors. They say, okay, I'm affirming such and such, it's not showing up in reality, and I'm feeling all these feelings. What do I do with the feelings? Or what do I do with these thoughts? And the answers that I have most resonated with is you don't need to do anything about them. You just have to recognize them for what they are. So being non-reactive is vital because, as Carl Jung noted, what we resist persists. So again, if I have a fearful thought, oh, I'm not going to get the money, and I feel negatively like I'm afraid I won't get the money, and then I feel that I need to do something about that thought and that feeling, it actually gives them power, energy, and reality, because we don't fear something that's not real. Like I said, if I say to you that someone you know who is perhaps quite big and strong, I say they're really angry at you and they're coming to beat you up, you will probably feel fear. But if I say Mickey Mouse is coming to beat you up, you won't feel fear. You might actually laugh because you know Mickey Mouse isn't real. So if I act on old thoughts and fears, I'm just reinforcing that identity. If I resist the old thoughts and fears, I give them power and make them more real. However, if I acknowledge them as remnants of a past identity and recognize that they hold no sway because I've chosen a new identity, a new way of being, then I free myself of that old perspective. I develop a sense of calm detachment from my current circumstances, which allows me to gain much needed perspective from the strong somatic emotions that often dictate my behavior. Now, I gave another talk about this where I believe it was called The Body Makes It Real, or What Happens When Your Body Believes a Lie. That might be the title that I ended up going with. So you can go back and watch that, but it's very important to understand this. We as human beings are very much motivated by what we feel in our body, and that very often makes things feel real. So again, if it's not words, right? Mickey Mouse is coming to get you right now. Mickey Mouse is so pissed. It's impossible for you to get upset or to feel anything. But if I say someone you know who's real is coming to get you, they're angry, they're going to beat you up, then you will feel it in your body. That fear will be made real by your belief of that thing. And you might actually take action as a result. So it's very important that while we can't necessarily control those things, we can give a different perspective to it. Understanding it's the past, for me, has been so freeing. It really has been very, very powerful. So in conclusion, I want to leave you with a quote from one of my favorite Zen teachers, Muso Kokushi. In it, he explains why understanding the relationship between past, present, future is so important. It is a characteristic tendency of human beings to indulge in emotions such as happiness, grief, or anger in response to present conditions. failing to balance these feelings with the awareness that present conditions are results of past causes. It is illogical to face the present only as an object of enjoyment or tolerance, neglecting to use it as an opportunity to create the future. So if we react to the present in the same way we always have, then we will create a future that resembles our present, because this present is the past of our future. We are in a kind of loop where we keep recreating the same things. So how do we create a different future, right? Is there anything you'd like to change about your reality? If not, that's great. But if there is, how do you do that? With new thoughts, words, and deeds. And how do we create new thoughts, words, and deeds? We recognize that how I feel in this moment is a result of the past, and that I do not need to react to my current feelings. I can consciously choose how I wish to respond instead. So I can respond with different thoughts, different words, and different deeds. Now, I believe many will hear this and assume that the actions we take is going to be the most impactful thing. But I would argue that it's actually your thoughts. Becoming aware of the story that you are telling yourself is of vital importance. What assumptions you are making about yourself and reality based on how you currently feel, right? What are they? One thing I learned from the law of assumption community is that we can attribute any meaning to anything that we want. If I get dumped, for instance, I can interpret it as meaning I am unlovable, or I can view it as the person dumping me being too unintelligent to see that they were giving up a good thing, and therefore ultimately being unfit to be my partner. So I can see myself as being spared. This is what Byron Katie says. She's like, if someone leaves me, I think I am spared. So this is what we're talking about at play in her, and the wisdom that she has been given, or she sees. So we don't ultimately suffer because of events and circumstances, but because of the way we are interpreting those events and circumstances. All right, everybody. So I hope that this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please reach out or leave them in the comments below. You can help me by sharing, commenting, giving me a thumbs up or a like on YouTube. All of those things do help out. Subscribing, of course. We also have links to the shop. A friend of mine and I have made some merch that you might enjoy. So links are at the beginning and the end of every video. We also have links below. You can become a patron. There's lots of things you can do if you get value from this. All right, everyone. Until next time, namaste. Have a beautiful day.